Okay, here we go. We're going to be doing session number 15. On page 31 in chapter 2, a section called Cause and Effect. All right, here we go. So you may still complain about fear, but you nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful. I have already indicated that you cannot ask me to release you from fear. I know it does not exist, but you do not. And if I intervened between your thoughts and their results, I would be tampering with a basic law of cause and effect, the most fundamental law there is. I would hardly help you if I depreciated the power of your own thinking. This would be in direct opposition to the purpose of this course. It is much more helpful to remind you that you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. You may feel at this point it would take a miracle to enable you to do this, which is perfectly true. You are not used to miracle-minded thinking, but you can be trained to think that way. All miracle workers need that kind of training. So, as he said in the previous section, don't ask me to take your fear, because I can't do that, because you made it. All right? And I don't want to come in and depreciate the power of your mind. I can't come in and overcome the decisions that you've made, or the decision, let's put it that way, that you have made. Right? He says you persist in making yourself fearful. And the way we do that is by wandering into the belief that I am separated from God. I am here in this experience and I'm on my own. I've left, I'm not in heaven, let's put it that way. I am not the offspring of God. All those beliefs that are rolled into the decision to believe in the belief that I could be separate, the ego thought system, the I, the individuality. All right? Now there's a duality, there's a me and a you. There's always us and them. Right? The oneness is done away with once we think that way. It's not done away with, it's forgotten, let's put it that way. So he says, I've already indicated that you cannot ask me to release you from fear. I know it doesn't exist. It does not exist. But you do not. All right? This is Jesus talking to Helen and through Helen to all of us. Jesus reminds us, he says, I know fear doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because in reality, where we do exist, there's no threat, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's only abundance. There's only invulnerability. He says, I know it doesn't exist, but you don't. Right? And he said, if I interfered in your thoughts, I'd be tampering with the basic law of cause and effect, which means my thought has an effect. So I wouldn't be helping you that way. He said it's much more helpful to remind you that you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. As he said last time, you're much too tolerant of mind wandering. Much too tolerant of mind wandering. He says you might think it takes a miracle to bring you into mindfulness, let's put it that way. And he says it would, but you can be trained to think that way. All miracle workers need that kind of training. Now, the Course in Miracles, we're reading from the text. There are two more books included in this big book here. There are two more books, and the second book is the workbook for students, which is a set of exercises, 365 exercises. Why 365, you might ask? One for each day. And at the beginning, when we read the introduction, Jesus tells us, don't be in such a hurry, don't rush, don't try to get through with this, don't cram, all right? As if you're back in college. All right. It says, just do one every day. Do one exercise every day. Then these exercises are made to periodically throughout the day. You start your day with miracle-minded thinking, so to speak. And you end your day that way. And in between, there are intervals where you stop and you remember the lesson for the day. Okay? That begins our training in beginning the day, ending the day, and throughout the course of our day, just stopping for a couple of seconds and noticing where we're at, so to speak. Just what thought system am I using here? What is it that I would prefer? Right? And the lessons are all so interesting, so interesting. Some are very provocative. I mean, they start off very provocative, right? He says, don't even worry about that. Just go and do it, all right? And the lessons will not only help us to become more mindful during the day, they help us to question this ego thought system. All right, just for an example, and it ties in with cause and effect, one of the early lessons is that I assign the meaning to everything that I see. Okay? You can think about that for a long time. All right? Another early lesson is I see only the past. Okay. So these are, very provocative lessons, very provocative thoughts that help us to become more miracle-minded, to become more mindful as we walk through the day, and to notice that when we've drifted, right, when we have become tolerant of going back into the ego forest. Right? So he says, I can't do it for you. He says, I can only suggest that you get your motor running. All right? So there are no idle thoughts. Every thought has an effect. Okay? Early on in my studying, I would read, even before I encountered the Course, I would read a book by Hans Selye, just about that, the effects of stressors and distress, things like that. You realize that our thoughts, Deepak Chopra says 10,000 a day, and one of the problems is that, 5,000 or 6,000, 7,000 of them are the same ones you had yesterday. So we sought, and if each one has an effect, each one has a response, then we're setting up patterns. We set up patterns. If I'm afraid of something, I'm kicking up the fight or flight response, right? And if every day I'm going into those fearful thoughts, I'm setting up a pattern where physically, adrenaline is being shot through my body, and my digestive tract is interrupted, and my heart rate is increased, things like that. So these patterns persist, and they set up results in the body. You know, you can only bend the plastic straw so many times before it develops a weakness. All right? But that's on a physical level. So on a spiritual level, we're so much better off to break that pattern of going into the physical world. And just for the moment, the few seconds, however long it takes to do the lessons, that we step out of that world, come to what they call the stately calm within, and then go back into the dream. But you bring the results of that visit, you bring it with you when you come back. Okay? He says you're not used to miracle-minded thinking, but you can be trained to think that way. All right. Paragraph 2, I cannot let you leave your mind unguided, or you will not be able to help me. Miracle working entails a full realization of the power of thought in order to avoid miscreation. Otherwise, a miracle will be necessary to set the mind itself straight, a circular process that would not force the time collapse for which the miracle was intended. The miracle worker must have genuine respect for true cause and effect as a necessary condition for the miracle to occur. All right? I must understand that cause and effect are in my mind. All right? One of the purposes of the course is to wake us up to the fact that we have a mind, right? And it is split between reality and the ego thought system. Right mind, ego thought system, wrong mind. Right? Jesus, Holy Spirit, the world. Okay? All right, and the right mind will lead us to the Christ consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, the awareness of abundance, the awareness of spaciousness, right? The awareness of our true existence. So that's why he says it's good. It's a good thing to train your mind to go back there, right, and get in touch with that condition. Right. So he repeats, both miracles and fear come from thoughts. If you are not free to choose one, you would also not be free to choose the other. By choosing the miracle, you have rejected fear, if only temporarily. You have been fearful of everyone and everything. You are afraid of God, of me, and of yourself. You have misperceived or miscreated us and believe in what you have made. You would not have done this if you were not afraid of your own thoughts. The fearful must miscreate because they misperceive creation. When you miscreate, you are in pain. The cause and effect principle now becomes a real expediter, though only temporarily. Actually, cause, with a capital C, is a term properly belonging to God. And his effect, with capital E, is his Son. This entails a set of cause and effect relationships totally different from those you introduce into miscreation. The fundamental concept in this world, then, between creation and miscreation, is fear is implicit in the second and all love in the first. The conflict is therefore one between love and fear. Let me just repeat that one. Kind of stumbled over the reading. The fundamental conflict in this world, then, is between creation and miscreation. All fear is implicit in the second, miscreation. All love is implicit in the first, which is creation. The conflict is therefore between love and fear. Right? That's why he talks about the miracle being an expediter. And to make it faster, this whole world is a conflict between love and fear. I mean, early on in our studies, I believe, we could ask ourselves the question, what is it for? Right? Whatever it is we're doing, whatever it is we're thinking, whatever it is we're planning, right? What is it for? Is it to help foster love or to help foster fear? Will it support and reinforce love, or will it reinforce fear? What is it for? You know, this is the basic conflict in this world. The fundamental conflict in the world is between creation and miscreation. Right? The creation is the extension of love. And miscreation is the misuse of the power of the mind. It's mistaken interpretations of God, and it rolls out from there. All right? Mistaken interpretation of yourself. So it becomes a conflict between creation, which yourself, your true self, only extends love, just as God does. All right? Our miscreations, our incorrect interpretation of who we are, it miscreates. It's in conflict. It runs around like a shrew. Right? Just run around like a nut all day. So the conflict is between love and fear. It has already been said that you believe you cannot control fear because you yourself made it, and you believe in it, and your belief in it seems to render it out of your control. Yet any attempt to resolve the error through attempting the mastery of fear is useless. In fact, it asserts the power of fear by the very assumption that it need be mastered. The true resolution rests entirely on mastery through love. I repeat that. The true resolution rests entirely on mastery through love. In the interim, however, the sense of conflict is inevitable, since you have placed yourself in a position where you believe in the power of what does not exist. Right? So he says, look, until you realize that love is the only thing that exists, right? You've placed yourself in a position where you believe in the power of what does not exist. Remember, in the beginning of this section, Jesus says, I know fear doesn't exist. You don't. So we believe in the power of what does not exist. All right? And he's not telling us to automatically jump to the declaration, I don't believe in fear anymore. It doesn't exist. Because you'll soon be tested with that one, let me tell you. You know, whatever your fears are, all right, they'll come knocking at your door and they'll say, oh yeah, really? You don't believe in us? All right. And this is when we need the intermediary. We need the right mind. We need the symbols of Jesus and Holy Spirit, right? Not to remove the fear, as he says, but to remove the condition that led to the fear. The condition that led to the fear was the belief that I am separated from my source, the belief that I am outside of heaven. Right? That belief is the condition that results in fear. So, in order to quote-unquote master fear, we have to go back to that original condition, which is in heaven. We visit the memory of who we really are and what our condition really is. And in that visitation, in the moments of that visitation, there is no fear. There is no fear. And we keep going back there until those moments last longer. All right? We'll later on refer to these moments as the holy instant. And Jesus says, how long is an instant? All right? An instant could be a long time. It could be very quick. My hands are too dry to snap my fingers. All right? It can be very quick, or it can last forever, infinitely. All right? But in that instant, we are visiting the memory of who we really are. Okay? And in that instant, fear is gone. It cannot exist. All right? That's what he means by true resolution. It rests entirely on mastery through love. In the interim, however, all right, he says, why are you still having you're walking the line, so to speak, why are you still having a problem believing totally in what I'm telling you? In the interim, the sense of conflict is inevitable. Since you have placed yourself in a position where you believe in the power of what does not exist. So we believe in the power of the ego. All right? We believe in this power of this physical existence, which leads to fear, uncertainty, loneliness, and constant fear. Right? Fear of one thing or another. As the lovable comedian Gilda Radner once said, in her persona as Rosanna Dana, if it's not one thing, it's another. Just goes to show you. If it's not one thing, it's another. And that's how we walk through the ego thought system, where there's little oases of happiness, right? And we just walk on, all right, until we get to the point where we say there must be a better way, all right, of dealing with this existence. There has to be a better way. All right? And we invite the memory to arise in our mind. Paragraph 5, page 32. Nothing and everything cannot coexist. Right? Two objects can't occupy the same place at the same time. Right? I remember that from my high school physics. Right? But nothing and everything cannot coexist. To believe in one is to deny the other. Fear is really nothing, and love is everything. Whenever light enters darkness, the darkness is abolished. What you believe is true for you. In this sense, the separation has occurred, and to deny it is merely to use denial inappropriately. However, to concentrate on error is only a further error. The initial corrective procedure is to recognize temporarily that there is a problem, but only as an indication that immediate correction is needed. This establishes a state of mind in which the atonement can be accepted without delay. It should be emphasized, however, that ultimately no compromise is possible between everything and nothing. Time is essentially a device by which all compromise in this respect can be given up. It only seems to be abolished by degrees, but time itself involves intervals that do not exist. Just think about that for a while. Miscreation made this necessary as a corrective device. The statement that says, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life," needs only one slight correction to be meaningful in this context. He gave it to his only begotten Son. So he gave the world to his only begotten Son, right, in order that we can use it to get back to him. It should especially, well, let's just go through that paragraph because it's quite succinct and powerful. And he starts off with the statement you can't argue with. Nothing and everything cannot coexist. And you really can't have your foot in nothing and everything at the same time. Right? It's like putting your foot in two different canoes. It's going to be painful. All right? To believe in one is to deny the other. All right? So what he's talking about, nothing, he's talking about the ego thought system. All right? So to believe in this world is to deny your true existence in reality. All right. To believe in one is to deny the other. Fear is really nothing, and love is everything. All right. So to believe in fear is to deny the existence of love. Okay? So now he's getting a little more poetic. He says, whenever light enters darkness, the darkness is abolished. Right? So when I go to the stately calm within, sit with the memory of who I really am, invite that memory to arise in my mind, I'm inviting the light. I'm inviting the light that will abolish the darkness. And we are encouraged to do that more and more. You know, later on in the course, Jesus is going to say, try doing what I'm telling you. You're going to feel better. So what better incentive could you have? You're going to feel better. Right? Eventually you'll be walking through this physical world with a little smile on your face, and the worry wrinkle, that furrowed brow, will be gone. You'll be very serene. Okay? So, what you believe is true for you. So if I believe I'm separated from God, it's true for me. Right? And my existence will try to prove that I'm right. And later on, Jesus will come up with that famous phrase, would you rather be right or happy? Right? But if I believe I'm separate, it's true for me, and that thought system will constantly try to reinforce itself and prove that I'm right. Right? So what you believe is true for you. In this sense, the separation has occurred. So in this sense, because you believe it's true, the separation has occurred. Right? And to deny it is merely to use denial inappropriately. Right? So if I just say, oh no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that anymore. Once again, you're skipping steps. We are skipping steps. I am skipping steps. And he says, you're using denial inappropriately because you're not looking at the problem. Right? You're just saying there is no problem. No, there's no problem anymore. I believe Freud referred to that as the flight into health, where patients would come to him for his counseling and therapy, and all of a sudden they say, oh, I feel much better now, thank you very much. And he says the flight into health, they go back to what they were doing, because they became a little unnerved by looking at the problem. Right? And Jesus will always tell us, don't be afraid of looking at the problem. He says, I know the problem doesn't exist. You don't. So look at the problem with me. Right? So, he says to deny the problem is merely to use denial inappropriately. However, to concentrate on error is only further error. The initial corrective procedure is to recognize temporarily that there is a problem. All right, so the corrective procedure is to say, yes, the problem is I do believe I'm separated from God. Okay? But only as an indication that immediate correction is needed. All right, so what I'm doing by stating, oh yes, I do believe that I'm separated from God, I'm also calling out for the correction. Can somebody help me? I believe that I'm separated from God. Can somebody help me? All right. So this establishes a state of mind in which the atonement can be accepted without delay. So it establishes a state of mind. Oh, I believe I'm separated from God. I need a correction. I need help. So it establishes a state of mind in which the atonement can be accepted without delay. So the correction can be accepted without delay. Right? So the idea that, no, you didn't separate from God. Right? So we can accept that thought. Right? It should be emphasized, however, that ultimately no compromise is possible between everything and nothing. Time is essentially a device by which all compromise in this respect can be given up. Right? So he says, if you look at it, we're using time so that it seems like you go back to the right mind, then you go back, and then you go back to the right mind, then you go back into the fear, and you go back to your right mind, then you go back into the ego thought system. He says, it only seems to be abolished by degrees, because time itself involves intervals that do not exist. All right? We don't know that. We're not aware of that. All right? And it's an interesting thought to even dwell on, that time is a made-up concept. Right? But just think about that, okay? But it's useful, for our purposes. We don't want to get blown away by everything all at once. All right? We can seem to be fluctuating, all right? And then we can seem to spend more time in mindfulness, so to speak, in the holy instant. All right? We can spend more time in that part of our mind that remembers who we are and reassures us that everything is fine. You're okay. As the old book says, I'm okay, you're okay. All right? So the belief in fear only seems to be abolished by degrees, right? Because time itself involves intervals that do not exist. Miscreation made this necessary as corrective device. So we miscreated the whole concept of time and space. So we can use that. The Holy Spirit can use that. We can use time and space to help us get back. Okay? So, and in that sense, the correction of that for God so loved the world. And he says you could just tweak it by saying God gave the world to his son to use it to get back to him. Right? And then in paragraph 6, he said it should be especially noted that God has only one son. God has only one son. Right? It's you. You're part of that oneness. All right? As we use the analogy, I might have said it once before, when the one son had that silly idea that said maybe I could be separate, then there was an effect of that thought where the mind all of a sudden becomes split, and the son chose to believe it could be separate. And in that choice, now the result of that was I did something wrong, I'm guilty of something, right? I'm going to be punished. What am I going to do? And the ego thought system, which was now established, says, let's get out of the mind. Let's leave the mind, that thought of us. Right? And so the son, the one son, projects himself or herself outward. And we put it to, we give the image of a mirror, a gigantic mirror just bursting apart, all the pieces scattering. Right? So we're all pieces of that. Right? And each piece of the mirror has all the aspects of a mirror. Each little piece of the mirror has all the aspects of the original mirror. Right? And that's basically the condition that we find ourselves in. I don't know if I should go off on a tangent, but I believe it was Père Teilhard de Chardin who had a theory of cosmogenesis, I believe he called it. As a matter of fact, I know he called it cosmogenesis, where the cosmos was going out and expanding and ever expanding, but it will come to a point where it will come back. All right? Nice theory. You know, made the Pope angry. Pope made him go study archaeology somewhere. All right? But, and I think he was a wonderful Jesuit, right? The intellects, all right, of the church, of the Catholic Church. But it was an interesting theory, but it's not quite like that, right? It's words that we use. The whole idea, though, is that it can, in an instant, the healing, the coming back of the cosmos, so to speak, the joining of the split mind into one mind once again, can happen in an instant. Okay? It can happen in an instant. It's just that we believe in time, we think things take time. Right? Just keep practicing bringing yourself into the holy instant. All right? So it should be especially noted that God has one Son. We are part of the oneness. If all his creations are his sons, everyone must be an integral part of the whole sonship, and you are. The sonship in its oneness transcends the sum of its parts. However, this is obscured as long as any of its parts is missing. That is why the conflict cannot ultimately be resolved until all the parts of the sonship have been returned. Only then can the meaning of wholeness in true sense be understood. Any part of the sonship can believe in error or incompleteness if he so chooses. However, if he does so, he is believing in the existence of nothingness. The correction of this error is the atonement. So, the correction of the belief in nothingness is the atonement. All right? And that's what we want to get back to. All right? That we never separated. We never walked out into this nothingness. Right? And so you practice. You do your work by noticing when you believe you're separated, and you believe you're on your own, and you believe something's threatening you. All right? Just ask for the correction. Help me to see this correctly. All right? Don't deny what it is that's making you fearful or angry, or don't deny it. Just say, here's the case. Help me to see this correctly. Here's my situation. And you bring in help from outside the dream, right, to help us interpret the dream until we become lucid dreamers. And in that lucidity, we are happy. Right? Jesus says you don't jump right away into reality. First, you will experience a happy dream. Right? But that's not the goal of the Course. The happy dream is not the goal of the Course. Right? It's to, as he says, one of the stated goals of the Course is to just wake you up to the fact you have a mind and you have a choice. You have a choice between love and fear. Right? So, paragraph 7, page 33, chapter 2, feet back on the ground. I have already briefly spoken about readiness, but some additional points might be helpful here. Readiness is only the prerequisite for accomplishment. The two should not be confused. As soon as a state of readiness occurs, there is usually some degree of desire to accomplish it, but it is also by no means necessarily undivided. The state does not imply more than a potential for a change of mind. Confidence cannot develop fully until mastery has been accomplished. We have already attempted to correct the fundamental error that fear can be mastered. I have emphasized that the only real mastery is through love. Readiness is only the beginning of confidence. You may think this implies that an enormous amount of time is necessary between readiness and mastery, but let me remind you that time and space are under my control. So in other words, we say, oh, yes, I really want to feel that connection with reality. I really want to feel the presence. I want to be here and now. All right? As Ram Dass would say. All right? He says, and in your mind, you think that there's a great distance between being ready, wanting the correction, and becoming aware of the correction. Jesus says, but let me remind you, he goes, that's all under my control. Time is under my control. Time and space are under my control, right? So don't worry about how long it's going to take. That's your ego trying to talk you out of it. That's your ego being threatened by the idea that, oh, maybe there's a different way to look at things. All right. So, cause and effect. All right. That's the end of that. Right? And let's see, I'm just looking in case I missed anything. I don't think so. Most likely. But if I did, remember you can always go, and I encourage you to go to the Foundation for A Course in Miracles. The website should be all lowercase, FACIM.org. A treasure trove of material to study the Course in Miracles, all put out by Dr. Kenneth Wapnick over the course of decades. Okay, he was a wonderful, wonderful person. All right, and he's consistent in his message, consistent in his presence. He was always consistent. All right, and I urge you to go there if you want to. You know, really get the idea of what's going on here. Okay, talk to you next time, and until then, keep smiling, okay?